Hi, welcome back to BLITZCRAFT. Today's crafting tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make these trees. I want to apologize for my last video's quality. I'm less than a novice at editing, and lighting wasn't all that great. Hopefully moving forward I'll get better, as I do with everything else. The more I do it, the better I get. Anyhow, so for these tree trunks, we're going to start. I use these praline, can of pralines that I get from that's how you pronounce it, that I get from the dollar store. Yeah, I just use the lid. That's something that the glue won't stick to. So I'm going to take a washer for weight in the bottom here, and we'll start by, we'll just grab a few skewer sticks. And the first one, I guess we'll go maybe this side. Just bust them. Take our big glue gun here. Get a good amount of glue there. And you have to hold it in place for a while. As I'm doing that, I'll start dragging what will eventually be our roots toward the edge here. All the way around. You want to build up your base before you really move any farther. Add a little bit more here to the base. Remember, this glue gun gets incredibly hot. As this dries, we're going to start working our way from the top to the bottom, always dragging toward the bottom and occasionally dragging these roots back out, so that we're always pulling lines toward the edge here, so that we end up with that root effect. We'll let that dry. Now that we've got a decent base started, I'm going to want to separate these skewers a bit. So I'm just going to grab some toothpick and shove it in between them. We'll eventually cover that up with more glue. I'm going to take some rope. We're going to add a little bit of girth to this tree. Adds a little bit of texture as well. So I'll take a couple wraps around the bottom so that we ensure to keep our base thicker. And then I'll go up around, cover where I have them toothpicks. Like so. Chop the rope there. We'll get back to that. Eventually we'll start adding some branches here, but for now let's make sure that our rope sticks. Do not get your fingers in this glue. I'm pretty much always pulling down and pumping harder on the glue gun when I get toward the base. This glue gun does most of the work, puts most of the texture into the tree for you. You really can't mess this up because as long as you stay fatter at the base than you are at the top, the glue gun is going to give it a real nice wood grain look. You'll see when it's all painted up. Where it's a little thicker there, I'm probably going to end up adding a branch, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to leave the point on it for now. I'm just going to stick this in here. We'll let that dry. Okay, so we're going to cut some more rope to add a little more girth and texture to this tree. This time I'm going to select one of these strands and remove it. Just like so. So then now I've got a single strand and, I don't know, 3 or 4. I'm going to take the single strand, just use it for girth on this branch. Start wrapping it around. When I get near the top, push it down so that it's thicker at the base. Do that a couple times. I'm going to leave a bunch hanging off. My glue gun. Just go down, moving the glue gun back and forth to add texture to this branch and to secure the rope and hide the rope texture. Okay, now while that's drying, take what remains of the strand, continue on up with the trunk. But I'm going to stop about right here because, well, a couple more wraps I suppose. Then I'll stop right there and we'll add another, let's add another branch. So, and then same thing, add our texture, stroking the glue down. We'll let that dry. It gets a little more interesting. We're going to cut this point off here. With this strand that we have here, we're going to separate it into 2 pieces. Pull off the excess. And we're going to add some glue where they split there to keep them split. And we're going to start going down the strand with glue. But you have to kind of hold it up in the shape that you want it to go. So you can make it as crooked. We're going to make it kind of crooked, like so. Sometimes I'll use the prowling can to hold one up while I work the other. Like so. Oh, that's pretty thin strand. Get it heaviest right there at the base. We can work all that in later. Don't worry about that strand that just fell and decided to go wherever the heck it wanted to. Trying to build up the glue at the base where the strand is thin here. That'll hold it in the direction you're wanting it to go. Yeah. Maybe I should have used a bigger strand. These are pretty thin. about that at all. You know what? These strands are too thin. We're going to put them together so they'll have a little more strength and this don't take forever. You could get it to work and be finer detail like I was trying to do there, as you've seen, but this is going to work a lot better. So we're going to go for this sort of shape, which means we're going to want to apply a bit of glue here at the base to give it something to hold it up. We keep dragging the glue, and you just have to hold it here by hand in the shape that you want it to be in. Keep working it down the trunk so that the shape of your tree is how you want it. Keep adding glue where it looks like it needs to be reinforced. Eventually this will get tacky enough that that praline can will hold it and I can move on to another part. Unfortunately, just have to wait. Start adding smaller amounts of glue, always dragging downward. Focusing on this joint right here. Sometimes you just stroke it without adding glue. It both adds texture and helps it dry. Starting to dry up. This is a little bit tedious, but this is where you get the really cool shapes for the tree. And once it dries, if I've got a point here or something I don't like, I'll just go back through with the glue gun and fix that. For now, I want it to basically take this shape that I'm holding it in. Blow on it to make it dry a little quicker. Try and avoid the drips and glops. Just try and smooth those into that particular branch. It's starting to hold itself up now. It's a point where, whoops. I think we can leave it sit like that for a moment. Alright, we'll let that dry, and I'll be working on the other trees. When you do trees, you should do more than one at a time. I'm just not filming them all because they're all basically the same. Okay, I'm going to add some more rope to this branch now. As you can see, this one's pretty much done. Grab a rather long length. I'm going to start at the top so that it doesn't unwind on me. Okay, well that branch is dry and I'm going to go ahead and add to the rest of the trunk here. Run that in. think I'll take another length to finish off the top here. Sticking to me. Again, you want to be real careful not to put your hand in the hot glue. You could use a smaller glue gun, but it's going to take longer. You might even get some finer detail out of it. It'd certainly be safer. But again, this is BLITZCRAFT. We're all about getting stuff done as quickly as possible. Alright, we'll let that. So that dried. Now we're going to unfurl what remains of this branch here. A little bit of glue in a spot that I don't want it. I'm sure you've noticed in the background that I'm working on other trees while I was waiting for that one to dry. So this would be awfully boring if you did one tree at a time, so I definitely suggest doing several. You know, when getting the twisted branches effect, you're best off to have at least 2 strands. So I'm going to twist these 2 together. I'm going to have them do something like this. We'll start with a good chunk of your glue right there where the 2 fork. And we'll gradually make this branch thicker. Breaking right there. And while I'm waiting for this one to dry a bit, I'll turn and add some glue to both of them. Might be a good idea to put some aluminum foil down before you start mucking up your table like I have, but I'll end up taking an X-Acto blade to it to clean it up. You're just going to have to hold this in position once you get enough glue on it that you think it's going to hold. That's the worst part about these is once I finish this tree, I'll show how easy it is to do one that doesn't have the twisted branches. It's just a matter of adding glue and texture and you're done. But the twisted branch effect is pretty cool, especially if you're going to have it as a graveyard tree. But it can look like a creepy graveyard tree, however when you apply my foliage to it, it suddenly doesn't. It looks like any old other tree. You get glops going like that, you want to try and smooth those into the branch below. And if it means letting go of one of these, they're not nowhere near cool yet anyhow. I'm going to let that dry for a few moments in my fingers and then I'll come back. Okay, so now I'm going to unfurl this piece at the top, see what it looks like. I'm just going to go ahead and completely unfurl it. I think we are getting close. Just separating all the strands here. Then it's going a wild ass direction. I'm going to leave those two unfurled because once painted they'll look pretty good. So now I'm just going to start filling in where I see too much rope showing, where it looks too thick, and where it just doesn't look like wood grain. I'm going to remove some of these wisps. Might be able to do this faster with a lighter, but I'm just going to pick at them real quick with my fingers. Alright. Add more glue, running up and down. Pulling the trigger where I see that I need more glue, and just running it up and down through the hot glue where I see I just need more texture. Where I got a big glob like that, I like to cover it up and hit it with a bunch of smaller lines. Make sure I'm putting good texture in the branches. Don't want any real flat, globby looking spots. You definitely want to hit better. More up and down streaks you can make in it, really, the more detail you're going to have in the wood grain. Glue gun's having a little trouble spitting glue out for some reason. Now I'm going to widen the base a little bit and make sure that I get that root look in there. Once in a while I notice a glob, I'm going to get in here and fix it. Of course, I get near completion, my glue gun decides that it's going to start spitting out glue real slow. I do not know how to fix that, unfortunately. Bad idea to put a few circular knot looking things in it too. Just give it a little bit more realistic look. Can't really see it very well now, but you'd be surprised what the detail that will pop out of this once it's painted. Alright, we'll let that dry, then we'll peel it off the base. I'll finish up the other trees and then we'll paint them flat black. This will basically just peel right off of this base here. In fact, we'll just go ahead and do it now. See that? Just popped right off there, and I will go around and trim so that it sits flat better. But it's still a little tacky. I'll trim it so that it sits flat, and then I'll spray paint them all black, and then we'll come back and paint them up. Okay, so I went ahead and spray painted the trees black, and then I went ahead and I hit them with this espresso satin. It's basically a burn umber. I was going to brush them with burn umber acrylic paint, but this was faster and saved on paint as well. So here's what we got. This was the one that I demonstrated on in the video. While it was drying, I made some others. I like the way this one turned out. And then a couple smaller ones. Now we're going to move on to this first step of dry brushing these. Most of them I'm going to do the first layer of dry brush in a nutmeg brown. I'll do those off camera. There ain't no sense in showing all of it. But we'll start with this one. So the first layer of dry brush, when you do trees, you always want to start with your darkest color first and then go with a lighter and lighter dry brush. So our next lightest color in this case is going to be nutmeg. A bit on the plate. And with this one I'm not worried about getting all the paint out of the brush, but I don't want it to be too wet. Then I start going across, just picking up highlights. See how it's starting to get that wood grain look. When I get down to the roots, I go kind of crosswise. And I go a little heavier on these frayed ends because they don't take paint as well. Might want to wear gloves. I'm sure I'm going to get paint on my fingers. Just kind of make sure you hit all the areas lightly. I think that's good for the first coat of dry brush on that one. This one, I decided to go a little crazy and try something I haven't tried before. I'm going to use this Pueblo to give it sort of more of an orange look. And then I'll probably hit it with a lighter brown as well, but we'll see how this ends up looking. And same technique, different brush, or you could even use the same brush. It probably wouldn't hurt much to have them mixed. I don't know if I'm going to like that. Maybe if I brush it heavier. It might not be so bad once it's done. This one I'm going to get more coverage, I think. Less dry brushing. These trees are customizable, so it's basically whatever look you're after. If you end up not liking it, change it, go over it with something else. Worst case scenario, you could always respray paint it, start all over. Finished up with this one. Okay. This last one I thought we'd try and do with sort of a swampy look. So I'm going to use the marsh green acrylic. I should have went with a darker green. Get those dangly pieces greener than I would with a brown wood tree. That'll clean right up off the table later. Alright, we'll let those dry. I'm going to go ahead and dry brush the remainder, just this basic nutmeg, and then we'll finish these off. We'll be back up. Okay, now I'm just going to add the final highlight to these. I'm going to start with a light mocha on this tree here. I am going to dry brush most of the paint out of my brush so that I'm only picking up the highlights. And then drag your brush ever so lightly across the tree so that you only pick up little tiny bits. It's almost too heavy there, but doesn't look bad. Definitely don't want to overdo this part. That don't look too bad. It's pretty good. That little spot right there. Not too bad. The swamp one, I think I'm going to highlight with a very light brushing of this kiwi. It's almost too yellow. Not too bad. And this one, I really didn't like the orange, so I added a little red, and then I covered it again with the nutmeg. I'm gonna see what it looks like with a light mocha dry brush. I may end up starting all over on this one with burnt umber, but we'll see. comes down to preference, really. Not bad. I'm gonna stick with it. Okay, not too bad. Next we'll be doing the foliage. What I use for the foliage is just this polyester fiber fill that you use to stuffed animals and pillows with. So I'll just kind of get an idea of how much I'm going to need. Okay, so I've taken my polyester to a well-vented area. Take a big clump of it. You want to separate it and get it as spread out as you possibly can. Otherwise, when you try and spread it at a later time onto your trees, you'll have some white showing. You can always bring it back for... set it down here. Then I've got a variety of greens. You can either do just a solid green, or you can play with it and say start with a dark green. I'll just go ahead and spray one of these a nice dark green. And the big one next to it, we'll spray with this lighter green. It does absorb a lot of spray paint. That larger one will add some variation. We'll add some different shades of green to it, whereas the one on the left here is probably always going to have that dark, almost pine tree green look to it. Once this dries, we'll end up flipping it over on the other side as well. This green gives almost a yellowish appearance. Just depends again on your preference whether you want that. Your tree has some variation there. I'm just going to move this over, let it dry, get some more, spread it out real good. This one we're going to hit with yellow first. It's easier to cover, to hit, overspray a light color with a dark color. The effect's a little bit different if you want to experiment for exactly what you're looking for. I'm going to make this sort of like an autumn foliage. I suppose we could set up probably one more. In fact, that one's spread out quite a bit. Let's give it some more paint. Last one here, I guess we'll do yellow and green. And I don't mind if a little overspray gets from one onto the other. For me, that's just variation. I've already got several shades of foliage, so I'm really only doing this on camera to show how it's done. Where's my dark green? Try to just leave a little bit of the yellow in there. Give it kind of a springtime look. And then maybe even one last burst of this yellowish green color itself. Very good. We'll let that dry and come back and finish it up. Okay, so this is what we ended up with. There are some disadvantages to this kind of foliage. Some people might think they look a little cartoony. You can buy some cheap trees made in China, model railroad variety, online. But they tend to have that flock stuff that shakes out and gets all over the place. The other disadvantage to these trees is they do kind of obscure the battlefield a little bit. Getting around them can be a little tricky. But I think they show the dense jungle foliage or dense forest. I kind of like the look of them. Not to mention they are, like I said, very versatile. This foliage, you can easily cram a whole bunch of it into a coffee can, and then you can change it into your next, for your next campaign. You can make it an autumn tree, or the foliage is so interchangeable and stays on so well. Basically form it with your hand to be whatever shape you want. Also, it's really quite convenient to only have to have so many trees. I mean, the bare roots look kind of cool for, be it a desert or a graveyard or something of that nature. Now, while I was doing this, I made this thing. I'm still not sure what it's going to be exactly, but you can see how I used the wood grain technique here. I think I'm going to put some kind of house up here or tree stand and eventually cover the top with a bunch of foliage. I cut a door out on the other side. I may make it a dice tower. I don't know. It may sit on my shelf unfinished for a while. I hope you liked this video. My next video, I'm going to ask you to look at my junk. No, I'm not that desperate for views yet. I'm just going to show you one of my dioramas and explain a little bit about it and see what you might want to see me build. If that doesn't light your fire, my next crafting tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make this fire and the different ways to use it. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed my video. Please like, share, and subscribe.